So welcome everyone to Wellness Springs, and I'm so happy to announce that my guest today is the lovely Phyllis Foundis, who is an absolutely remarkable soul and a true inspiration for all women. And I can testify to that because I've actually seen her in action twice at a Silver Sirens event, which was organized by another dynamic soul, Faith Agugu. And both these ladies are real dynamos. I was absolutely blown away with Phyllis's lovely energy. And I read this morning when I was doing a little bit of catch up that essentially she's open to life's magic, passionate people, unconditional hugs, and organic dark chocolate, and not necessarily in that order, but all at once. And that is definitely me also. So I know we've got all those things in common, and I know from watching you in action that it's going to be a lovely, lively chat. And without further ado, I would like to say welcome, Phyllis, and thank you so much for giving up your precious time to come on the show today.
It's my pleasure, and you've no idea when we talk about divine timing, Beverly, you've no idea how divine the timing of this particular conversation at this time, you know, in this moment, in this hour means to me. So thank you for the opportunity. And I know it's been a little bit of a to and fro situation in the lead up to this conversation, but I'm glad that we had the patience and you persisted, and I respect and admire that in you, and I recognize me in you. Absolutely.
Thank you. Well, I believe we are one, so we mirror each other. So what we like or dislike in someone is the same that we need in ourselves to work on. So it's great. So thank you. And so for our lovely audience, I'd like to give a little background information. So Phyllis is a multi-award-winning TV host, TED talker, writer, producer, and she is crazy about people and loves words. Long ones, short ones, neat ones, and even dirty ones. And especially dirty ones. I'm so lucky. I've got so much to share with you on this podcast, especially, you know, about your little antics with TEDx and so forth. But I'll just continue with your bio. And so regarding the short ones, neat ones, and dirty ones, she's written billions of them in ad campaigns, books, and even one-woman shows, online articles, scripts, and speeches for top agencies like Ogilvy and Mather and brands like Mercedes and Dior. Wow, I feel very honored to be in your presence. And then, after 25 years as copywriter, Phyllis took a leap of faith, or, as she says in inverted commas, she lost her mind. I would say that's stepping into innocence and just being in the zone and going with the flow. And magic then happened because in 2004, she performed her own, very own self-penned one-woman show called The Virgin Club. And it was staged in London's West End, the Edinburgh Festival, and Melbourne's International Comedy Festival. And then in 2018, she released her book, The Joy of SAGS, Sexual Adventures from the Pre-Menopausal Frontline. And ladies, you don't have to be pre-menopausal, because when I picked up this book at Phyllis's speaking event, I thought, oh, who could I give it to? And she was like, no. You need it for yourself. And I'm like, but I'm not premenopausal. I didn't even go through a menopause. And she's like, doesn't matter. You find it of interest. So it's like, and I was pleasantly surprised, and I'll let you know why a bit later.
Okay. It's intriguing.
And this book is actually for women of all ages. And Phyllis is also currently filming her new interview series, A Little Bit of Lip, commissioned by Netflix. And this is only tiny tasters of what she does. Oh my God, you are truly, truly unstoppable. And I can see in the background that you've got your lovely lip lounge. Yes. And when I was at the event, I was blown away. And of course, everybody was racing and queuing up and having their pictures taken on the lip lounge. And I had one taken with Jackie Coyne recently on it. And we put it on Instagram, and we just had so many comments. It's like everybody wants to, everybody wants to know the story behind it. But I think before we delve in, it would be really great if you could tell the audience about your background, because I like to go into the nitty-gritties to know what makes you click, like where you grew up, your nationality, etc., and your education, family, siblings.
Okay. I'll keep it brief because I'm sure there's so much more just by your introduction that you have other things that you want to explore. So I'm basically, I come from Greek Egyptian parents. I'm an only child, or my father's youngest child. And sorry, my father's only child, but my mother's youngest child, because mum was married before she met my father, and she's got 3 other children from her first marriage. And so I was not the afterthought. I'm going to say I was the last cab off the rank, which is interesting. And it's a cool segue into the fact that my father was a cab driver for many, many, many years in Sydney, 40 years. And he was quite an incredible man in terms of his ability to connect with people in his cab. And he would come home on the weekends, and we would go to the typical big fat Greek family gatherings, and my father would hold audience. And at the time I didn't realize or appreciate the magic of what he was doing, because no one in the family had those experiences and those gritty understandings of people from every walk of life. And my father just had a knack of telling the story based on his connections, fleeting connections with these people in his cab, and make people laugh, moved, and it was a real gift. And I think in many ways I've carried on that mantle.
I would definitely say that you have, because listening at Silver Sirens to your interview with Kathy Lett, you had everybody in fits laughing. The whole room was in tears of laughter.
Kathy is very easy to talk to, and we've met before many, many, many years ago in London, and so we have that rapport, I guess. But even if we'd only just met, and with people who I've only just met, I try to show you that I'm genuinely interested in your story and what you have to say, because I think that's how connection happens, when you are genuinely engaged with someone else. And I think living in a time now where it's all online, and we're losing very, very quickly, if we haven't already, that art of connection and that ability to be intimately connected with someone when we first meet them. And by intimacy, I'm not talking about sex, obviously, but it's just that human ability to just connect with someone, you know. And I despair of it. I despair of where the world is going.
Oh, the same here. And for many years, I taught networking skills, and what people are craving for, as you rightly said, is heart-to-heart connection. And I couldn't believe it. Like, a lot of people could speak at a boardroom. I had one lawyer that I coached. She could speak at the boardroom, speak at work events to thousands of people. But when it came to changing jobs and have to meet new staff, she freaked out because they've lost the art of social conversation. And many people are like that. They might be fun at work, but they couldn't stand up in a wedding. But it's about, obviously your father, you know, taught you on another level how to connect from your heart. And, you know, a lot of cab drivers are like counselors as well. So it's wonderful you got this gift. And I know that you were very close to your father, and you were deeply upset and hurt when he transcended. And I know you had remarkable life events happening after that. Would you like to firstly say how important family is to you, and what happened when your father did pass?
Yeah, I mean, Dad passed in 2011, and it was an ordeal on many levels, because I never lost someone so close and integral to who I am, and certainly what he represents what he represented and what he continues to represent in my family. And I'm talking about my intimate family, so my 2 sons and certainly my mother. But I think what was very difficult about that time, and almost a bit of a godsend, was that I had a fixed period of time with him where he was in a proper hospice for people who are passing from cancer. And I had 2, so my youngest boy at the time he wasn't even 2 yet. And my eldest was just about to turn 5. And we would just spend weekend after weekend there. I'd go in with the pram, with the boy's father as well. Max would fall asleep in the pram. We'd kind of shunt him off into the corner. And then it turned, when things deteriorated, it's kind of difficult for me to talk about, because it's right. Just, yeah. They would, who I call the earthbound angels. So the staff of an actual hospice, they are remarkable beyond description. They recognized that being there for someone at the end of life versus being there when someone is born is just as much a gift and just as much a blessing and an honor. And they treat their roles as such. And so they would move in a little fold-away bed for me into Dad's room, and I pretty much slept there every night until I got sick. I got a stomach bug, and I had to go and spend a couple nights away. But I was there with him day and night. He had lost his ability to talk, which for my father would have been really frustrating, because he loved talking, and he was whispering. And we had lots of intimate conversations. And there was one conversation which I talk about in my TED Talk, where I said, Dad, you've loved me so much since I was a baby, so much that it's ridiculous. And he said, well, that's what love is, ridiculous. And I'll never forget that. And he just, when I asked him what advice, at the time I just turned 40, and I said, what advice would you give for me for the next 40 years of my life? And he said, just love everybody. So Dad was very much about love, and he embodied that. He wasn't perfect. I'm not going to sit here and, glamorize him by any stretch of the imagination, but he taught me a lot. And I think in hindsight, he absolutely continues to teach me. And I feel his presence, and I feel when things go a certain kind of way that he has his hand in it in some way. So even just where I'm sitting right now, this is an apartment that I just moved into in the last couple months. And it's in the same building that I moved in 2018. And it happens to have this panoramic view of Randwick Racecourse. Now, my father loved horse racing, and he loved gambling. And and the way this apartment came about was miraculous and sudden and perfect. And I can't help but thinking, even though my hair is all really messy at the moment, I keep doing this. My father was a part of the process in some way. I'm 100% sure of it.
Yeah, I'm also 100% sure of it as well, because I believe when we die, it's only our physical body, and our soul or spirit or life force essence continues. And you can feel the presence of people and call upon them. And he did play such an integral part of your life. And it's wonderful that you still communicate with him right now. And what about your mum? What was her background, and is she still alive? Is she around?
Mum is still with us. She's a force of nature. She's 92,
Wow.
going strong. Yeah, she lives on her own. She's fiercely independent. You know, she's slowing down a little bit. She can't do as much as she used to, obviously, a year ago, 2 years ago. But she only lives about 10 minutes away from me, and I try and see her as often as I can. She was here over the weekend. And yeah, her and I have got an interesting relationship. She's a very strong personality, and so am I. So I think the older I get, the more I realize that I get her fire, and my father's calm. So I'm a combination of the mercurial versus the more kind of peaceful approach to life. But I think I respect the operation of both of those in me, of both of those sides of me, because it means that I can activate certain aspects of me if I want to achieve certain things.
It's like yin and yang, night and day. It was interesting you said that the carers are very loving and special people, because yes. You were very blessed. It's not always that way, but I think in general, especially like I know in UK, they have Macmillan's nurses who self-funded, and now they do a lot of fundraisers for their salaries, right. And they go into homes, and they generally care about people. And I think it's truly magical. I was blessed to be with my parents when my father anyway, when he transcended, and many other souls. And it's just amazing, to witness it and then see the calm on people's faces when they do transcend. And it's almost like they're smiling and just feeling that love energy. So I know today it's very hard because, since all the constant lockdowns, we've been battling for my father-in-law to get carers and looking at homes, and everybody is overworked and running ragged. And, when we did a trial, they weren't turning up, or they turn up late and then they were off sick. And anyway, I know it's a global problem, but we finally found a good place for him. But anyway, back to you. So you covered so much in your lifetime, and I know in 2003 you put your big brands on ice and you wrote The Virgin Club, a semi-autobiographical account of your life as a 20-something virgin. Could you please tell us more about that?
Well, I lost my virginity when I was 26, and at the time I felt like it was the bane of my existence, and I judged myself based on that situation. And the reason why I wrote that book is because I wish there was something like that back in my early 20s, when I just would be so frustrated and focusing on it to the point where it became, for want of a better phrase, a monkey on my back. And I wish someone had just tapped me on the shoulder and said, you know what, it doesn't define you. And it really doesn't. And I think the emphasis that we place, no matter how old you are, on, sex and feeling a certain kind of way and being with a certain person, and it's I think it takes away from who we are, not only as women but certainly as human beings. And so I just and yes, I've written a book about sexuality, but as I keep telling everyone who picks up the book and they go, oh, it's a book about sex, it's actually not. It's, sex is a manifestation of our sexuality, absolutely, but it is not the one defining thing of our sexuality. So
yeah, you have to look at the whole picture. But I think for you, it's really needed to be education in schools, because I know when I was growing up, my mother was very shy and would never talk about sex, and it was like taboo. So, and then in school, if you're a virgin, they all it's like you've got a big stigma. Nobody wants to be near you. There's something wrong with you. And a lot of people get forced into having sex for the wrong reason. And it's not a pleasant experience. And, you know, it could be anywhere behind a nightclub or in a field or someone's house, just a quick wham bam, thank you, ma'am, and no feelings for the girl, and et cetera, you know, with what you go through, usually the hymen break-in and the bleeding. So I think it's really good. Just a while back, I was talking to some ladies, and they were even saying, you know, the girls at school, some of them, one of their daughters came home, was 13, and saying, oh, I went to the cinema, blah, 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 and I give so-and-so a blowjob. And they were like, what? And they were like, oh, yeah, they won't talk to us unless we do that. It's nothing, it's only a blowjob. And the mother was questioning them, thinking maybe they don't know. And apparently it's really big. And you talked about support as well. And I know people get bullied in school, and, you know, and not only children, everybody at various ages are lonely. It's like a huge issue around the world. You know, people are lonely and sad because they haven't found that inner touch. But anyway, you've got two sons who are now teenagers. What do they think about you talking about sex and menopause and so forth?
Yeah, it's hilarious, actually, because they're very engaged and very intelligent young men. And so there was a running gag when I actually published my book, and the eldest picked up the first, and, you know, the book turned to the first page, and the first line is, you know, the world needs more old sluts. And he just keeps repeating that. It's like, Mama, really? Is this how you're going to begin the book? Really? And they're not backward in coming forward in telling me what they think, which I love. And that's how we've raised them, to question and to give their points of view. And sometimes it's a bit confrontational, and sometimes it's very, very, very welcome. But I think, and now the youngest has cottoned on to the fact that all I talk about is menopause, which is also not true. But I guess in their world and in their minds, their mother talks a lot about these particular topics. I think, though, that the upside to all that is that they understand that you know, there's not much that's going to shock me, and I'm very open with both my sons. You know, both their father and I are very open with the things that we discuss. But it's a very, just based on the conversations that we've had and the experiences that we've had with some of their peers as well, females, you know, girls, the teenage girls of this generation are a far cry from what you and I were like. They're far more forthright, aggressive in some ways, and I think hypersexualized. And I have a real issue with that, because I think with the advent of, you know, with social media, technology expanding as rapidly as it is and continues to, we're just creating an environment where these girls feel the pressure to be a certain way beyond the time that they're really ready to be in that. I mean, I look at some of the girls and the way that they're dressing, and not to be approved, but the way that they're dressing, the way that they're speaking, the way that they're behaving. And it's like, are you really ready to be this at 15, 16, 17? Not realizing that you have plenty of time to grow into who you really are, and to respect and honor yourself far beyond what a man or another woman thinks of you.
Yeah, and as I said, it's all about peer pressure, and it's all about, we're living in a fast world with social media, and everybody wants likes on their Facebook page or, you know, Snapchat or TikTok, whatever the youngsters are using today. And it's about that need to feel wanted and approval and be liked. And they seem to sacrifice it above all. But yeah, so I just think it's funny. Do you want to tell us about your TEDx talk? Because you actually faked an orgasm on stage and in your one-man show. Yeah.
Spoilers, Beverly.
Oh, sorry. Oops, sorry.
Well, you know, I'm hoping people watching this are going to now still go and watch it. I was having a conversation. I had a meeting yesterday, and this particular lady had seen that I'd given a TED talk, and I said, "So have you watched it?" And she said, "No, I haven't." I said, "Well, it's quite enlightening, but I would suggest, and it's a roller coaster ride, so I would suggest that you know that going in, but you also wear headphones, because there is what some people would deem as explicit content, and I didn't want to tell her much more than that. But yeah, I mean, so that TED talk came about around the same time that Dad passed, and so the memory of losing him and of being right at his bedside when he passed was very vivid and still very clear in my mind, and certainly in my heart. And so I wanted to talk about, I mean, the whole idea of that talk was about the light bulb moment. And, you know, the question is, when do they come to you? And for me, it's when I surrender and when I am not in control. And I am a self-confessed control freak. And so that was something that I had realized, that when my father was passing and there was nothing I could do about it, I could write all the journals in the world. I could read all the brochures about being with a loved one who is going, you know, who is in the final stages of life and what happens and all the scientific nitty gritty. But the reality was that there was nothing I could do. And so the only control I had was the writing that I was doing and the conversations that Dad and I had. And, you know, we've all heard that cliche, turn your mess into a message. Well, the mess for me was the grief process and the acute sense of loss that I felt. And I wrapped all that up as best as I could. And I turned that into the TED Talk. And the TED Talk is about death and little death. And for your listeners, little death is a translation of the French phrase petite mort, which is also another name for an orgasm. And so the other time that I feel completely out of control, where I surrender, is when I have an orgasm. So that's all I'm going to say. You need to watch the TED Talk to see how on earth I connected those two very disparate concepts.
Yeah. And even though I've let the cat out of the bag, so to speak, I can still highly recommend watching it, because, I don't want to say too much, but I know a reporter said what you did on the stage was far better than Meg Ryan. So
apparently, apparently, I will leave it up to your listeners to decide.
Exactly. Yeah, they can email you, stay in touch with you, because I can, you had, I think it was over 1 million views in a short period of time for that. And obviously it caused a great stir and people are still watching it. So turn on your light bulb, people, and go to listen to Phyllis Foundis TEDx talk. And I'll put it in the write-up, so people, all we'll have to do is press a button and click. And I'm curious, because you also are running an amazing show of your own at the moment, called a TV show called A Little Bit of Lip, which is also commissioned by Netflix. And I'm just intrigued why you chose the lips, and because when I watched your trailer and seeing you sitting in front of Sydney Harbour Bridge on that lip lounge, it was like, wow. I'm just intrigued why you bought it and where you bought it and what inspired you.
I'm a huge fan of Salvador Dali, and Elle is actually a reproduction of one of his artworks, one of his very famous artworks, which is on display, I think, in one of the Dali museums, either in it's in Spain. Whether or not it's in his little hometown, I'm not sure, but it is there and on display. And what I love about him, he was one of the foremost surrealists, and he just was a real kind of maverick. He didn't care what the world thought of him. He just created, and he was, I think, the embodiment of what a true artist is. So from that perspective, I feel really connected to him. and his confidence and his brashness. And so I've always been a big fan, and there was a time when I had, and I still have it, but the band keeps snapping off. One of his most famous paintings is of the melting, clock and watch, and it's called The Disintegration of the Persistence of Memory. And I've just come back from New York, and we went to the MoMA, and I stood in front of one of them, and I'm like, oh my goodness! And I think I've got a photo here if I could get it up in time. Anyway, so that's why I bought Elle, and then I've always wanted to have my own talk show, whether it's, small, big, in between, whatever. For me, I get such joy having conversations with people from any and every walk of life. And the biggest buzz that I get is when you see me talking with someone who you perceive in a certain kind of way. And then when we talk and that intimacy is established, what you find out and what you discover about that person is completely different to what you thought going in. And that therein lies the magic. And so then I just thought a little bit of lip, and the show was born.
Fantastic. And I guess it's like the old cliche, never judge a book by its cover. And it's great that you're finding the true gems inside people. And I know also that you created a YouTube channel, A Little Purple, and do you want to tell us how that came about and why?
Well, that's all part of my same channel, and it's because I'm a big fan of Prince. And when he passed away in 2016, towards the end of that year, I got on a plane and I went to Minneapolis, where they staged a thing called the Celebration, and Prince would do that every year, but of course this particular year was particularly special, and they basically opened up his home, Paisley Park in Chanhassen, and fans from around the world just converged on this one spot, and the energy was palpable. You could just feel him there. It was quite remarkable. And I just took my iPhone and I interviewed lots of people, from his hairdresser who worked with him for 30 years to some of his bodyguards, band members, and packaged all that up and just created the dig, if you will, the diaries. And you can watch all these great interviews with interesting people who work with Prince in his orbit on my YouTube channel.
Fantastic. And wow, you're so dynamic and thinking outside the box. There's so much change at the moment. A lot of people have lost their jobs, or they no longer exist. So for people who are reinventing themselves, or for school leavers, what tips would you give them to find work, or how to start up?
In what particular field? Just in general? In
general. Because I find a lot of people are lost.
Yes. Yeah. Listen, I would first and foremost be yourself. Be yourself. Keep your boundaries intact. And because I'm discovering that even in my 50s, boundaries and keeping them titanium clad is still huge. But also, when you are yourself, 100% yourself, you will only attract people who dig you and want you. And the reverse is also true. So if you're not being yourself and you're trying to slot into a situation that you really want to belong in, the universe will conspire in such a way, or even just the people that are in this particular tribe will oust you in a very unceremonious way, and it hurts. And I've had an experience like that in the last little while, and I can tell you, it doesn't matter how old you are, it really stings. So the best advice I can give you is be yourself. There's a great another cliche, but I really subscribe to it. Your vibe attracts your tribe. So, and I say this to my sons all the time. When you are yourself and people react against that, it's a fantastic culling mechanism, because you realize exactly who is for you and who is against you. And one of my favorite writers and poets, Maya Angelou, said one of my, well, actually, if not my favorite quote of all time, and that is, when someone shows you who they are, believe them. Believe them. So yeah, I guess, Beverly, the main advice is just do explore the opportunities that are going to bring out the best in you, whether it's the relationships that you choose to have, platonic or romantic, or the work, the line of work that you want to do. And we all have gifts that we need to share with the world, and it's just a matter of doing things that actually make you feel alive. And there's even if you're in a position right now and the work doesn't really juice you, and you feel that contrast of it doesn't feel right, there's something that I just can't quite put my finger on. It's the people, is it the work, what is it? Make another choice and make it as best as you can. And I think Beverly and I were talking about this before you pressed record. Ask for help. Our guides, our ancestors, God, whatever deities you believe in, they are there to serve us, just like we are here to serve humanity. And I really believe that.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything you said. And I love Maya Angelou as well. And we all need someone to aspire to. And, how do you juggle, because you mentioned about your children, juggle your children and work?
Well, they're very, very large boys. It's hard to juggle them. One's 5'11" and one is taller than me, probably about 5'4" now. The other one, he's 13. Their father is extremely supportive, and so we kind of balance them between us. He does a lot of shift work though, so we're if he's out, then I'm taking care of the boys. But it's not easy. It's not always easy. I don't have hired help. I wish I did. My mother is 92, so there's only so much that she can do to help. They're quite independent though. I mean, if there was a time I had to stay overnight at a hotel, this is going back a couple of months ago, and the boy's father was working, and he had to be away, so that he couldn't actually be with the boys. So the boys had one night overnight, which I call their bachelor time, on their own. And sometimes you got to let go a little bit. And as a very feisty, attached Greek mother, that was a little hard, but FaceTiming them all the time, and that was all wonderful. But I don't have a succinct, witty, profound answer to that question, Beverly. How do I juggle it? It's one day at a time. It's just tonight I've got an event that I need to go to, and it'll just be a question of, the boys come home from school, I might give them a snack and then I'll go, and they might go to their fathers. But yeah, it's just, how tricky it's been to try and connect over the last few weeks. So right, but it's all, again, it's a question of boundaries as well. How much, and I do realize this, I oversubscribe myself, and it's I haven't had a true holiday for a long time. Yes, I've just come back from New York, but that was not a relaxing, let's go and have pedicures at SAGS Fifth Avenue kind of situation. It was running around with 3 teenage boys on a school excursion. But my lesson, I think, for 2023 is to try and take more time to myself and expanding my creative portfolio. So there's a lot of exciting stuff in the works, and I can't wait.
Oh, fantastic. And I saw, because I've only recently connected with you on LinkedIn, I saw that you are the founder of Lead with Love leadership workshops. Do you want to quickly tell us about those?
Yeah, so I'll be rebranding that this year, but I don't want to, next year, but that's still in the works. And that'll come off the back of a book that I'm also working on, because I think, and I was having this conversation with a colleague yesterday, that the very phrase leadership and leaders has unfortunately become a buzzword, and everyone's a leader, and every company has a leadership team and team leaders. And I think we're just using it too much, too often. It's lost its meaning. People who have no business being anywhere near leading people are being given these roles. Something happened to me actually about a month ago, and I can't wait to tell this story, and I'm going to tell it with as much how can I say this without being nasty, because it's not in my it's not my style, but I'm going to do it with as much respect, but with a very heavy dose of acerbic wit as I can, because it just illustrated in a very clear way that while we can all profess to be highly intelligent human beings with soaring IQs, if your EQ is 0, all of that stuff means nothing. And I think to be a really phenomenal, outstanding, memorable leader, you need EQ in spades. And I really don't believe that industry and industries are making good use of their people, and they're just making this person a leader and that person a manager. And by the way, I can't stand the word manager. I'm not manageable. We've already had, I think you were there when I gave that speech.
Yeah.
So that's another term that I think needs to be abolished in the leadership space.
Yeah.
Managers.
Oh, I look forward to that talk. And if there was one thing that you could do to change the world, what would that be?
I love that question. And I love that question because I don't think that we need to change the world on this big, grand, dramatic scale, because we have changed the world right here, right now, Beverly, and we've done that by connecting with each other. So I see you as a world. I am a world, and something as simple as smiling at a complete stranger on the street, having a wonderful conversation, complimenting someone, making someone feel amazing, loved, seen, is changing the world all the time. You don't need $1 billion. I was watching a documentary the other day on, on Kevin Hart, bless his cotton socks. Mm-hmm. And, he's a fantastic comedian, super, super talented, obviously wildly successful. And he's determined to become a billionaire. He's obviously really well off anyway, but determined to become a billionaire because he wants to change the world. And my thinking is, you don't need $1 billion. You don't even need $20 to change the world. All you need is a very strong sense of who you are and the gifts that you have to give to the world, and the rest just falls into place.
Thank you. That was great. It's like what you started off by saying with your father. It's all about connection, and it's about love. And I think love is enough. If we can come from the space of love, everything else flows. That's a great way to change our world. So thank you so much. And I'll put your website, your 2 websites, and all your TED Talks and your book links. And yeah, let's spread the love. Thank you, Phyllis. Thank you.
It's my pleasure. Thank you, Beverly, for your time.
Pleasure.